Hi everyone, I'm Shivani Choksi and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Impaction. We connect people to jobs in the social impact space, but also provide easier ways that people can give back to their local communities. So today I'm really excited to have Ramzi Taim join us. But before we get started, I would love to introduce him and introduce his amazing work as a result of COVID-19, and happy to answer any questions, once this video session becomes online and we can connect you guys afterwards. So let me introduce Ramzi. So today we're actually learning about mitigating the COVID-19 spread and preventing burnout in essential healthcare workers from Ramzi Taim. Ramzi is a social entrepreneur and student whose focus falls heavily on public health and ways of improving the holistic health of those in underserved communities. He recently co-founded Cooked19, a nonprofit organization that has delivered 850 meals purchased from local restaurants in Texas to frontline healthcare workers battling the pandemic. This mitigates the risk for community spread and prevents burnout in essential healthcare workers. The meals being purchased from local restaurants helps make up for potential lost revenue and reduces food waste. So Ramzi, we're so excited to have you here today. And if you have any more information or about yourself or Cooked19, we would love to hear it. If not, we can start the presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. And I think, we can just go ahead and get started with the presentation. Awesome. Okay. And please let me know when you can see my screen.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's see.
Yes, I can see it. Yes.
Okay, cool. Great. Okay, let me go ahead and put it in full screen mode.
Perfect.
Okay, still looks good?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, cool. Awesome, okay. So hello everyone, my name is Ramzi Taim. I'm a co-executive director at Cooked19, where we're supporting those who support us. Yes, so since March of this year, over $120 billion in restaurant revenue has been lost nationwide. And according to an NPR article, over 700,000 restaurant employees have lost their jobs. As for essential frontline healthcare workers, they are 5 times more likely to contract COVID-19 and are increasingly suffering from burnout, which could lead to potential depression. Burnout in healthcare workers causes a decrease in the quality of healthcare, and it is the source of this burnout is the prolonged stress that a lot of these healthcare workers are under. Frontline healthcare workers have also been quarantining themselves to prevent community spread, which has led to many not being able to maybe go to the grocery store to buy food and perhaps feed themselves. Diving deeper into this issue, it is often the case that healthcare workers are short-staffed, with many frontline healthcare workers saying that the pandemic has really put a toll on them that's beyond physical exhaustion. As mentioned in the Atlantic article presented on the screen, many of these workers have just faced and are still currently facing their 3rd wave of cases, with this 3rd wave being said to be worse than the previous 2. While it is the case that frontline healthcare workers do understand more about the virus and know how to kind of mitigate the risk with the virus and maybe effectively treat patients, the burnout that the healthcare workers are facing has the potential to raise deaths within the US and worldwide, with Dallas just recently facing its most deadly week. Yes, and so moving forward, at Cook19, we like to say that 1 meal purchase is double the impact delivered. And so we say this because we're helping restaurants recuperate some of their lost revenue by having our team of volunteers go out and pick up meals and deliver them at no cost to frontline healthcare workers battling the pandemic. By providing these meals, we mitigate the risk of community spread, having not to worry about really how or when or where they're going to be getting their next meal, and just seeing the community support has really helped reduce burnout in these healthcare workers. And so, as you can tell from the screen, our business model, we have 3 main sources of revenue: private contributions, business or corporate partnerships, as well as grants. And so with this, we can say that the lion's share of our revenue would be from the corporate partnerships. And so here you will see, this is just an example of maybe perhaps how we will going about our corporate partnerships. This is tentative, and this is here solely for example purposes. But as you can tell, we have a 3 kind of tiered program per se, a platinum, gold, and silver level. And so the greater the tier, the higher, more exclusive the tier is, the more high value benefits that our corporates would be receiving. This can go from maybe perhaps social media shout outs, logo placement on COVID-19 marketing materials, volunteer t-shirts, fundraising events, and even just being placed on our website. Yes, and so this is kind of, yeah, so we're still working on this. We're getting really close to finalizing the details. And this is kind of the way we're gonna be approaching our corporate partnerships. Okay, so to kind of give you a glimpse of what our market opportunity or our market size is. So in total, Texan households donate approximately $16 billion annually to nonprofits and charities. And then even bringing this number further, it can be said that we found that Texas food banks make approximately $2 billion cumulatively in Texas alone. This does not include maybe perhaps government grants, philanthropic organizations, and corporate giving. And so with that, we anticipate, or we are projecting that our market share of the market would be 500,000, considering that we are expanding to more heavily impacted cities, including El Paso and then eventually Houston. And so, yes, so with COVID-19, since our founding in April of 2020, COVID-19 has become a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We've delivered over 850 meals to frontline healthcare workers and have had over $12,000 in community impact. We've partnered with 3 restaurants and 5 hospitals in 4 cities, Arlington, Dallas, San Antonio, and El Paso, which has a pending restaurant partnership. And so with that, we received $9,000 in grants and mentorship from multiple organizations, including RevTech Ventures, TechStars, the Honors College, and the Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at UT Dallas. We've been featured in several media outlets, including Dallas Morning News and Dallas Innovates. And so to just bring it back a bit, on the screen, you'll see a few of the large challenges we've faced as an organization, and I can say that we are presently facing current day. Establishing partnerships, especially as it pertains to the restaurants, and in the beginning was particularly challenging just because a lot of the times these restaurants were very skeptical of our cause. So overcoming this obstacle took a great amount of proving our credibility, or even showing and demonstrating other deliveries we've done in the past with other restaurant partners. Nonetheless, I can say that this is still a challenge today, and we are still working on overcoming this credibility barrier. Another challenge has been fundraising and planning. While my co-founder and I have had previous experience in fundraising and perhaps running small businesses, neither of us have ever started a nonprofit or even organization as such. And so with it, to get initial funding was challenging and required us to really think beyond the box. Nonetheless, we've been very blessed to have excellent mentors who have really helped us along the way, and are thankful for and are thankful for the team members who really joined us and really contributed to the COVID-19 mission. And then lastly, the last challenge on this screen is legalities. Initially, we knew very little behind what it means to be a nonprofit, or what's a 501c3 nonprofit organization? What's the difference between a uncorporated nonprofit association and a corporation? There's just a lot of jargon that we really didn't know. But with great amounts of research and just networking with others experienced in the field, we learned greatly. However, to this day, a 501c3 nonprofit organization, we have to be very careful with the verbiage we use in our media, as well as how we handle our finances. And so this is just a small snippet of maybe the big challenges we've faced as an organization, and that we are continually overcoming as we go. And so in terms of what's to come next, we are currently in the process of expanding to El Paso, as I mentioned earlier. We have a partnership with a hospital in El Paso called Providence Campus, and have pending restaurant partnerships. And so with this, we'll be focusing, and then we will also be focusing heavily on fundraising with our events team, who are working on an upcoming COVID-19 event, that is to take place in the year of 2021. Lastly, considering our desire to continue this mission even beyond these times or the COVID times, whatever you'd like to call it. So we are planning to transition from focusing on frontline healthcare workers to communities most impacted by COVID-19. So this would be households and people who have faced great food insecurities and perhaps individuals who fall within the lower socioeconomic status areas and or even non-Hispanic, Black, and Hispanic households. Yes, and so, however, this transition would likely not take place until the number of cases of COVID-19 drop drastically, which we hope to occur with the upcoming vaccine. Yes, and so COVID-19 has already proven to have a positive impact on the community. We will continue to mindfully carry out our mission and support those supporting us. Thank you for your time, and I now open the floor to questions.
Great job. This is absolutely amazing. So thank you. I have a couple of questions. Can you tell us a little bit more about the business partnership model? What does that look like more in detail?
Yes, so currently we do not have any business partnerships. Just to be transparent with you, we are in the process of doing that, and so we're looking to get business partnerships as well as business sponsorships. And so with the business sponsorships, that'll be more focused on maybe perhaps events. So maybe different community businesses or like small businesses around the area can sponsor particular COVID-19 events. And so in a sense, supporting that one event and then they're done. The business partnerships, what we're hoping to get out of this is more of a mutual benefit to where, because a lot of businesses do have like a lot of, like they emphasize corporate social responsibility. And so we're hoping to be that gateway to maybe having them fulfill their corporate social responsibility. And so, yeah, so that's where this model here kind of comes in to where we're really promoting them. And they're not donating a dollar amount, they're more so donating meals. And so, yeah, that's kind of how we're going about it. And so we will initially be reaching out to maybe businesses and other organizations partnered with our hospital partners because they'd be more likely to want to partner with us, considering that we have a mutual hospital partner. So that's kind of how we're going about it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So can you tell me a little bit about the competition in this space, right? So there are meal sharing apps, they're not specific to frontline workers or anything like that, but can you tell me a little bit more about how you guys are working with that? What's your, competitive edge?
Yes. So yes, you are absolutely right about that. And like there are other food banks perhaps that are maybe cook meals that's relatively more inexpensive. But I think our competitive edge here is that we are also supporting restaurants beyond COVID-19. I was going to say COVID-19. Beyond COVID-19, a lot of these restaurants are still going to be recuperating and really recovering from all the losses that they had from COVID-19. And so while our meals are slightly more expensive than perhaps other food banks, we are helping two kind of communities in a way. We're helping those, let's just say this is past COVID-19. We're helping those who are most impacted by COVID-19 and then also the restaurants. And then those most impacted by COVID-19 will be getting quality meals that are coming from quality restaurants. And a lot of times with the restaurant partners that we have, we kind of negotiate a little bit and kind of get the meals priced a little bit lower, considering that we are giving them out to the community. We're helping those within our immediate community.
Okay.
So yeah, competitive advantage, probably helping to we're serving two segments of the population rather than one, whereas a lot of other food banks and meal sharing apps they're helping one subset of the community.
Yeah, so it's a two-sided marketplace at the end of the day. It's the hospitals on one side and the restaurants are on the other, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, cool. So I don't know if you talked about this before, but if I wanted to essentially, like, I think you have more of a B2B model, right? Where it's either the hospital that's signing up or it's the restaurant that's signing up. It's not the individual customer. Like a frontline healthcare worker can't sign up unless their hospital signs up, right?
Correct. Or they perhaps, yes, that is correct. However, there could be a frontline healthcare worker who maybe goes on our website and puts in a request for that said hospital, and we'd reach out to the hospital ourselves and maybe negotiate, maybe get it to where we can arrange a delivery to that particular hospital. So it is business to business, but maybe frontline healthcare workers could reach out to us requesting meals.
Okay, cool. Very cool. Okay, so you talked about like the challenges that you had. So the partnership is one, the
Mhm.
fundraising is the other. But can you tell me a little bit more about the legalities portion? I know that you talked a little bit about it, but would love to hear more.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, so with the legalities, I think we really didn't have a lot of knowledge regarding how to establish a 501c. Well,
Mm,
so with establishing a 501c3, there's two different pathways you can take. There's one where it's like a much smaller application. If you make $50,000 or less per year, it's maybe a few pages. Whereas if you make $50,000 or more per year, it's like a 40-page application. But so I think a lot of that really, most of it was like a lot of the jargon, like maybe deciding, oh, do we want to be an uncorporated nonprofit association, or do we want to be a corporation? So like maybe the difference between the two, an uncorporated nonprofit association is like a band of people who are working towards a similar cause, and are more personally liable for what goes on within an organization. Whereas a corporation, it's like, yeah, so you are not as personally liable for what goes on within the organization. Similar to establishing an LLC per se. Um, yeah, and so that's kind of a lot of the barriers, and like maybe forming a lot of our documents, because we were low on funds too, and so we had to really kind of do a lot of research, maybe network with other people that we know, and maybe find small templates that are for free online, and maybe like tailor them towards our organization, and like creating the organizational structure document. Yeah, it just took a lot of time, I think, and a lot of like there was a lot of reading that was involved, and a lot of researching a lot of the jargon that I had mentioned. That's kind of like where it came from. I think now we're a little bit more steady with it. And again, just like being careful with what we say online, and then also with how we handle our finances, just being transparent with that. Mhm.
So you guys are incorporated as now as a 501c3, right?
We are incorporated as a,
You are.
yes, we are. So when we filled out our application, we were an unincorporated nonprofit association as a 501c3. So 501c3 can be either or.
Right.
But pretty soon we're looking to transition to a corporation.
Incorporated. Okay, cool.
Yes.
So it sounds like the corporated 501c3, like you said, is it's less not accountability, but there isn't as much risk for the entire team, and maybe it's the risk is um with like with the person who's actually incorporated it, just like an LLC corporation.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. Yeah, very similar. There are a few different discrepancies and differences, but in a simple sense, yeah, I would say so.
Interesting. Okay. I don't think a lot of our community members actually know it. They always have this question about what it takes to create incorporate a nonprofit and what the legalities behind it is, especially because
Mhm.
so many people come in with ideas, but they don't know what to do with their ideas after they start the business. So do you have any, words of advice in regards to this?
So I guess, are you referring to like maybe community members? Is this like they're starting nonprofits?
Yeah,
I'm assuming
especially nonprofits.
nonprofits.
Yeah.
Okay, so starting. So I guess okay. So I guess I kind of share kind of how. So like yeah, maybe you have an idea. So similar to us, we had an idea. Um, we were not incorporated before, so we started. So I guess the way we went about it is that we had a few deliveries made, and
Mhm.
then we went and became incorporated as a 501c3. And so with that, I think regardless of whether so if you start, let's just say you have an idea and it's a nonprofit, and then you've raised funding, and then you've already like committed to a few maybe actions or events or maybe what your nonprofit does, but you're not a 501c3. Um, that's okay, because if you go and you fill out the 501c3 nonprofit application, all the funding that you gained since the day that you started, and so like let's say the day you started is the day that you registered for an EIN number.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that's the first step. Register for an EIN, become an official organization under the IRS.
Mhm.
But so ever since, like if let's just say in April we made a few deliveries, and then we didn't go out and become a 501c3 until June. All the funding that we gained between April and June would be tax deductible. I think
Mhm.
that's a big thing for a lot of people who are donating to these organizations. I think that's why a lot of people or a lot of nonprofits become 501c3s, so that their donors can deduct it from their taxes. And I think the biggest barrier from there is just understanding whether you'd make 50,000 or more per year, which I think starting off can be a little bit difficult to kind of project. And so we filled out the smaller application initially for 50,000 and less. And so if it is the case that we ever go and make greater than 50,000, perhaps like in the next year or so, we'd go in and maybe amend our application, or I think there's a process where you can go and file the other application. I can't remember the exact names of the applications. Yeah, but yeah, honestly, I would say go ahead and give your nonprofit or idea a try. Go give it a go. Maybe run a few rounds, and if you see it going and sustaining, I would say fill out that 501c3 application. And I had another organization ask me to kind of create a step-by-step thing, or like almost like a flow chart, perhaps for creating a 501c3. And so I'm happy to share that afterwards with you too, if that's something of interest.
Oh, that would be of high interest. Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Very
Yeah.
cool. And I think that it must be hard as, someone transitioning from an idea to a nonprofit to actually project whether or not they will be making 50,000 or above. So what are some words of advice that you can use, especially as entrepreneurs? We think that, oh, we might be making $100,000 in the first year, and then it's just the profit's just going to go up after that. So can you share a little bit about what you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I think we were, and not to say it's good to be ambitious, right? And it's good
Yeah,
to
of
have those
course.
high.
Of
Yeah,
course.
we were in the same boat. We were like, wow, we're about to accumulate over 50K, and then we're just going to probably file. Initially we were going to file the first one, but I think having that little leeway between not being officially incorporated and also being officially incorporated kind of gave us like those. Maybe it was probably about a month and a half that we really kind of saw like maybe the amount of, what's the word for it? Like just the amount of funding that we were able to really receive and gain during that small period of time. And we were able to kind of project, okay, where is this going? Do we see ourselves making over 50K a year from now? Do we see ourselves making over 50K in the next few months? I think having that little leeway between being an official 501c3 and not is a good way to kind of gauge where you are with your idea and whether or not you should fill out that second application. And that second application is $600. It's a lot more than this, the smaller application. So taking that into consideration as well with maybe the amount of funding that you do have. And I know a lot of individuals often starting these ideas do have limited funding. And so I see it in the sense that maybe, I guess the way I usually go about it, unless you gain like tremendous amount of funding initially, but the way I kind of would go about it is starting off with a smaller application, maybe 50K and less, because the application does cost less. And if you make over 50,000, then just go ahead and refiling for the other one, because you would have a substantial amount of funding to be able to take care of the fee that's associated with the application, rather than maybe anticipating over 50,000 and filing for the application, which is a huge chunk of change initially. And maybe you don't go over 50,000, or maybe you just make a few thousand, then maybe you could have used that funding for something else in your project. Yeah. So starting with the smaller application, then going to the bigger application is the way I would that's the way I would kind of, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. That's the way I would kind of advise somebody to go. That's the direction I would advise somebody to go. Yeah.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And I think a lot of people watching this will ultimately resonate with that. And especially in the ideas phase, it takes a little bit of time to really ramp up your company, especially as you're speaking to more customers and are understanding more of their needs. So yeah, thank you for that very valuable piece of advice. Definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you were talking a little bit about you have a co-founder right now. So can you tell us a little bit about your team?
Yes. Yeah. So yes, I have a co-founder right now. So it started with just us two. And to be honest with you, like we did not, because again, we've never established an organization like this. We did not realize how much it's actually going to take to run an organization like this. And it was just us two. And so, yes, so initially we brought on a few volunteers. We have a few delivery volunteers that kind of handle the deliveries between the hospitals and the restaurants. And then we brought on a logistics coordinator, a social media specialist who's now a marketing manager, and then we have an events team and a fundraising team. And so in total, I believe there are 12 to 14 of us if we're
Oh,
including
wow.
the volunteers. Yeah, and so the events team will be focusing on the events. It's kind of like I mentioned with you, we mentioned earlier. And so those events we focused, again, obtaining funding, but also just kind of community building and bringing like those in the community together. And so that, and of course, for now, those will be virtual. The fundraising team will be focusing on these corporate partnerships that we were discussing, as well as any giving days that kind of go throughout the year. And the marketing manager kind of deals with any of our social media, as well as maybe the stories with our hospitals, maybe frontline healthcare workers. But yeah, so that's kind of our team right now, I would say. So yeah, 12 to 14 of us. I can find the exact number. But
Yeah, that's
yeah,
cool. Wow. In what, 9 months, you guys grew to 14 team members, or how long has it been since you guys
it's been
started?
since April. So I think
April.
it's been less than 9 months. Yeah. And
Wow.
yeah, so we've had like the large, like we recently brought on many more people. I think before it was only like maybe 4 or 5 of us at most. It was 8. And then we like, because we bring people on, a lot of individuals who join us are college students,
Yeah.
similar to our, like my co-founder and I. And so we kind of, we want to kind of take that into consideration and kind of consider that, you know, school does come first for many of these individuals. And so we want to take that into consideration. And so we kind of bring people on like almost like on a semester by semester basis,
Mm.
considering that schedules change. And so like a lot of individuals and everybody that's on our team is a volunteer, as likewise ourselves. And so, yeah,
Mhm.
we try to take that in consideration. We're very thankful to have like our team and them working hard on, you know, helping us grow as well. So yeah,
Nice.
I think.
How did you find everyone? And to scale up that fast is fascinating. They must
Mhm.
really resonate with the mission itself as well.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, so that was so some individuals. So my co-founder and I were both part of the Terry Foundation. So it's like a scholarship program that connects that's across 13 different universities in Texas, and so we have a large network through that foundation.
Mm-hmm.
So we were able to connect with a lot of individuals through there. So we have a few Terrys in our team, but we also have a few UT Dallas students, some UT Dallas alumni. I think a lot of it just came from word of mouth, and then maybe, yeah, individuals who maybe resonated with the mission. Um, yeah, I think that's where it mostly kind of came from, which again, very blessed, very thankful for all the support and like people who want to get involved with COVID-19. I think the big thing for us is like, yeah, we try to get as many people involved as we can, as we are able to, like with our capacity. And so, yeah, and so we've had other people reach out who want to be involved as well. And so we've kind of created small email lists. And so when we have open positions and such, we send out the emails, and if they're interested, they apply.
Nice.
Um, yeah.
So it's all through, mostly through word of mouth, referrals. It's honestly the best organic marketing that you can get, especially as an early stage company. That's amazing.
Agree. Well, thank you. Yeah. But,
So
you
you
know,
were telling,
still learning.
oh, yeah, of course,
Mhm.
of course.
Yeah.
So you were telling me about, expansion, especially. I know that you're based in Texas and you're thinking of expanding to El Paso and Houston, but are you guys thinking of replicating this model across, the South, the Midwest? Are you thinking beyond Texas? What is the next, outside of El Paso and Houston, are you guys thinking about moving elsewhere?
Yes. So a lot of that will also depend on kind of how this like how like because with the release of the vaccine coming out,
Yeah.
and like how this whole COVID situation kind of goes about, because it may be the case that maybe cases do drop drastically in the next few months. The way I'm kind of seeing it happen, just based upon like the news and what's been going on, I don't see us going beyond Texas with frontline healthcare workers,
Hmm.
but then potentially in the future with maybe helping communities most impacted by COVID-19. I can see us going beyond Texas, but I think initially we are focusing on Texas and being able to get a handle of the partners we have in Texas as well, because we don't want to just partner with every single restaurant and then maybe not purchase meals from all of them, or maybe just say, oh, we're partners, but we're not really purchasing meals from them, we're really helping them. So we try to bring partners on slowly so that we are able to effectively help them. But yeah, I do see us going beyond Texas in the future, and maybe some time from now, but yeah, in the future, more than likely beyond helping frontline healthcare workers. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so I know that, like you were talking about just now, the vaccine has come out. There are some certain people that are going to be more high priority than others. Um, I know
Correct.
that,
Yeah.
you know, your organization was created as a result of COVID-19. And as a way for you all to be sustainable, you're thinking about reaching out to food insecure families who might be adversely affected by COVID-19. Can you tell me a little bit about, I guess, a little bit about, you know, what's next outside of partnership and funding and expansion? Because COVID-19, I think COVID is going to be, at least the mindset, um, the the logistical parts that corporations and all of them had to deal with. Also, obviously, the healthcare side. Can you tell me a little bit about what the next 5-10 years look like for you guys, and a little bit about, you know, what happens after COVID is over and everyone's vaccinated?
Yes, absolutely. So yes, the next 5 to 10 years, hopefully it will be the case that we're beyond Texas at that point.
Yeah.
And so it would kind of fall in within a model of maybe like a sponsored meal kind of model, to where perhaps, and this is just examples, like maybe like, let's just say there's community A, and community A needs 100 meals on a weekly basis, or maybe like on, let's just say December 23rd, they need 100 meals. And so corporations or individuals can go on our website and they'll see this community needs this many meals on this day, or on a weekly basis. So individuals and corporations will be able to kind of sponsor these meals to be delivered to these communities. So I guess long term, it would almost fall within a sponsored meal kind of model, and we still do intend to be partnered with local restaurants. So the idea of supporting local restaurants, I think, will stay for us long term. Yeah, and so that's kind of the direction we're looking to go in the future.
That's really cool. That's really cool. That can be great for the corporation's CSR policies and their PR and all of that. That's really cool. Is there anyone else who's doing this, who would be doing this?
Are you referring to like long term, or are you talking about, are you referring to just what we're doing right now?
No, the corporation model.
Let's see. Not that I've come across. I mean, to be frank with you, I haven't looked into it too much regarding like if there are other corporations that are doing this, like the sponsored meal kind of thing, with where they purchase it from restaurants. I don't know if there are others that I know of, at least, but I have not looked into it deeply. Yeah, so.
That's a great idea. That's a really great idea. Yeah, I think, you know, when you're talking about replicating this model, and I don't know, I don't think it would be like a franchise or anything, but partnering, that trifecta in partnering with corporations, that end community group, and then obviously the partner with local restaurants, it's a win-win-win for all three, you know, so it's just, yeah, that's just a really good model. Can I ask, you know, what are your impact metrics? How are you tracking what success looks like for you?
Yes, so a lot of it lately, like our KPI has been just meals delivered.
Yeah.
And so it's been that, and then maybe like how much, like perhaps how much food are we preventing restaurants from wasting? And then maybe how much money are we helping healthcare workers save as well, just from purchasing meals in the cafeteria? That's kind of the way we've kind of gone about measuring our metrics, which again may change with the upcoming vaccine and with our change of focus. But that's kind of been our primary metric. And so usually whenever anybody asks, we usually mention the meals, the number of meals delivered, or maybe the dollar community impact, which is calculated based upon like food waste reduced, and then the money saved. healthcare workers. Yeah.
Can you tell me the money saved by healthcare workers? Can you tell me a little bit about how you guys are tracking that?
So we are basing it upon, so we are still, a lot of it we're still calculating because
Yeah.
we have to contact each of our hospitals, but more so based upon what's the average cost of a meal in the hospital. How many times maybe do healthcare workers go eat at
Mm,
these cafeterias? Yeah, and so yeah, that's kind of the way we've been going about it right now.
mm,
Um, and these were numbers that we were just recently kind of putting together. And so these may change a bit, or we may add a few other factors.
mm.
But that's kind of how we are going about calculating these numbers. Yeah, and so we are in the process of reaching out to every single hospital and seeing like how much are their foods priced, like how often do these healthcare workers go eat at these restaurants? I mean, these cafeterias. Do they eat throughout the day? How long has it been since they've went to the cafeteria with COVID-19?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so that takes a lot of interviewing too. So
Yeah.
so that'll take some time to really calculate that.
Cool. Okay. A common community question that we receive is actually the sales model, right? How do
Mhm,
you pitch to these large hospitals or organizations or your customers? And especially because a lot of our community members end up being students as well. So
mhm,
a lot of times we've heard students say that, oh, when I pitch, um, these institutions don't take me seriously, and it's hard to actually get my foot in the door and actually,
mhm.
close the deal with that institution. So, how would you advise our future entrepreneurs on pitching and getting that community partnership?
Absolutely. Of course, I'm no expert at all. I'm still in learning phase as
Well,
well.
you've
But I
gotten a
think,
lot of partnerships,
yeah,
so that's great.
that's true. Thank you. Yeah, and so honestly, a lot of these have been cold calls. We'd cold call them, and I think I mentioned to you like credibility was a huge thing. We'd cold call them. I think what helped us a lot, I think what gave us an advantage is that we are students, and that's the first thing we would say. Like, hey, we're students at the University of Texas at Dallas. We're starting this initiative. We were looking to support, frontline. So let's just say it's hospital, like telling them, we're looking to deliver meals and support your frontline healthcare workers. Is this something you'd be interested in? A lot of times, these hospitals would not decline meals coming to them. Restaurants, on the other hand, a lot of them were like, I would call and I would like mention like, what we're doing, and they'd say, like they'd ask questions like, why should I trust you? um, and like maybe, oh, give me a few days and I'll call you back. And they don't call back, but then I call back. Yeah, and then I would share any information I have about myself, maybe perhaps about our organization, where we are, just being completely transparent, and even maybe guaranteeing to them that we will make the payment even before the meals are delivered. Um, let's just see. But I think in terms of like, I think identifying what the actual need is in the community is a big one.
Mm,
I think it's very easy for us to come up with ideas and then say, oh, it's a good idea. But then maybe not going through that validation process of understanding, is it really something that the community needs? Is it really, yeah, is it something that the community needs, or is it something that you think that they need? I
mm,
think there's a difference between those two things. Yeah. And so, like, for instance, like food insecurities, and this was like, I had a long conversation with a mentor previously about this, but like, yeah, like, is it that they need meals, or is it that they need funding in general to be able to pay for other bills so that they can go get food? Um,
mm,
yeah, so understanding community needs. And then also, I would just suggest like maybe, like, I'm not sure if like a lot of the community members you mentioned, like they're going for like the huge corporations at first, but starting with small organizations, starting with small communities, just building up from there. You don't have to go for the whale initially. Which, it's good to do that, and it's good for just practice and being able, and it may go through, but also just being open to any kind of partnership that comes your way, and reaching out to maybe individuals who work in those organizations or in those businesses, via LinkedIn, and just kind of sharing with them like, hey, I'm working on this. I was hoping maybe kind of discuss with you how we can maybe best integrate this with an organization like yours, or like with your organization, maybe how I can best go about creating this partnership with another organization that's similar to yours.
mm,
So not being hesitant to really reach out to individuals within your desired partner locations, I would say.
mm.
Yeah,
You're throwing a
I
lot of good
hope that
nuggets
helps.
out there, a lot of
Okay.
good nuggets. So, especially when you were talking about the transparency, right? Making
Mhm.
a process as transparent as possible with your customers. So, um, ultimately they can gain your trust and you can gain credibility. Can you walk us through that process a little bit more and what transparency
Mhm.
means to you?
Yes. So let's see, that's a good question. Yeah. So I guess it would depend who. Yeah. So I think transparency, I think it means being outright honest on what your intentions are with the partnership,
Yeah.
what you hope to get out of it yourself. Because a lot of times it's off like, I think a lot of times, sometimes these calls go kind of one way. We're like, oh, we'll give you this and we'll give you this and we'll give you that. But then it's never like, oh, but this is what I want out of this partnership as well.
Mm.
Um, because a lot of, I think when you're negotiating with anybody, it's like, you want to know what's their intention behind this as well, like what are they hoping to get out of this. So that's kind of transparency to me, but also like being honest about who I am as a person, what I do. um, I think a lot of times when people are investing or like maybe establishing partnerships with organizations, they're not doing it with the organization itself, maybe perhaps the person behind it. um,
Mm.
and so I think transparent about who I am, what I do, maybe where I work, or if I'm a student. I think that's where a lot of the credibility kind of falls. Yeah. So not like, being, if they ask me a question, just being honest and telling them what it is. If it's something that's not good, perhaps, or maybe something that, not, let's not say not good, but maybe perhaps you're not where you want to be, and
Mm.
maybe you're not proud of it, but being honest about that and saying, I'm right here, this is where I am, this is in a tough spot I am, but I'm hoping to get out of that doing this. Yeah, rather than saying, oh yeah, we're doing excellent, we are at this great state, but then really you're not doing so well. That's not being transparent, and that's not being as honest perhaps. And so I think that's a lot of how it kind of ties to how I try to be transparent, to answer your
Yeah.
question. Yeah,
Yeah, no, it does. And it really resonates. I don't know if you've read a book called The Originals by Adam Grant.
I have not. No, I'll have to check
And
that out. Yeah.
yeah, you should. In it, he talks about, especially when entrepreneurs are trying to pitch to investors, and whether they're investors or customers or whoever it is. But there's
Hmm.
a story about a group of entrepreneurs that pitched to investors in Disney about their product.
Mm,
And investors hear, hundreds of pitches every single week. And, they're trying to make the best match for their portfolio and whatnot.
mhm,
So what ended up happening was, instead of saying, this is the reason why you should invest in us, we've done, all of these accomplishments, we made this much impact, this is our revenue, all of that, this is why we're so great, they actually switched it up. They said, this is the reason why you shouldn't invest in us. And
mm,
this is, we're facing all of these challenges and we really need a lot of help and all of that. And instead, what ended up happening was that these investors invested in this group because they ended up problem solving on the challenges together, rather than, investors are a lot of times they're skeptical, they're trying to find a hole in your conversation, a hole in your pitch, and then they
mhm,
press that until they see you visibly uncomfortable sometimes. So obviously each investor is different, but what ended up happening was this level of transparency ended up building the trust between the entrepreneurs and the investors, and
mhm.
it built that level of transparency that was required to build a trusting relationship. So I like the fact that you talked about transparency in this way, because a lot of times people think that a level of vulnerability is not allowed in business, but
Mhm.
actually it can bring people together and allow them to problem solve together, and build a sense of community, even with people that you've just met. So I love that you said that, because it's absolutely true.
Thank you for saying that. I think what you just said was very well said within itself. And also, like you mentioned, like people speak about like not like maybe vulnerability not being a factor in business, but what's business made of? People. So
Exactly.
I think having to remember that, right? Like we're all people at the end of the day, whether it's in business or whether it's in a hospital or whether it's in at home, we're people. So we have emotions, we have vulnerabilities. And I think that's the best way to really connect with others. Business is connections. And so
Mm,
building connections. So yeah, very well said. Very well said.
I love that. Thank
I
you.
have to check that out.
Um, I have two more questions for you. So
Mhm.
the you also talked about customer validation. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means to you and how you validated your idea with your customers?
Yes. So for this organization, it was a little bit different. We did start this project late March and release really early April, which I think for a lot of ideas and organizations maybe may not be so ideal. I think for this organization here, we saw an immediate need. Um, we saw churches delivering meals to frontline healthcare workers. We saw other small organizations delivering meals to frontline healthcare workers, and we saw, okay, there is an immediate need for frontline healthcare workers, like that they need meals. And then same with the restaurants, like people not going to restaurants, restaurants losing all this revenue, like people losing their jobs. I think that's how we were able to kind of really validate it immediately. And I think this is like a very unique scenario. But in terms of customer validation, a lot of times I think there's a test called the MOM test. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I would recommend looking at something called the MOM tests. I believe there's like a video on YouTube, but it's not like, so for instance, if you're trying to sell someone, I think the example they use in the video is like a cookbook. You
Mm-hmm.
don't go up to them and say, hey, would you use this cookbook? You more so ask them like about where, like if they have cookbooks, like where did you buy those? Oh, do you ever use ebooks or do you just use books? Just not really asking them the question directly, maybe learning about their habits and what they actually care about, rather than trying to say, would you buy this book? Would you buy these socks? More so learning about what they currently use, how they use it. Is it actually a need? What you're trying to propose, is it actually a need, or is it something that's kind of you feel is a need? Yeah, but so yeah, I guess this scenario is a little bit unique in that we did not we did not really have to go through that longer kind of process. And again, very, very unique scenario, and I think it rarely happens. But um, yeah, so I'd recommend going through the mom test for going through the validation process. And yeah, just asking questions, like not asking questions expecting particular answers, but asking questions out of more so curiosity and trying to understand the person and what they actually need in their life rather than what you assume that they need. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a TED talk about I don't know who it was, but the importance of
Mm,
asking why, the importance of
yeah.
just shutting up and listening to your community, instead of putting
Mhm.
your own solution in it. And actually you'll be more successful in the long run if you do so. So yeah,
I
absolutely.
agree. Yeah, and just tying with what you just said, because I'm very, very into like food insecurity, and like, you know, like non-communicable diseases as well. But in terms of food insecurities, because I was working on a different project perhaps, and it kind of tied to food securities, kind of did not. What one mentor suggested to me was to go out and volunteer in these areas that I was hoping to help, and understanding the community, because we ourselves are not part of that community, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you may be part of that community, you may understand needs, but more times than not, a lot of these individuals who want to go help particular communities are not in those communities. And so it's easy to assume what you think that they need, maybe perhaps based on your personal experiences or experiences you had in other communities. But going out and volunteering with those communities, and like kind of understanding the dynamic and what they need, maybe like perhaps, yeah, what they face day by day, I think would help you get a better understanding of,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, how you can help those communities, because it may not be, because I mean, and I think it may not be your idea, and I think being okay with that is important too. Being okay that you're giving your best and that your idea may not be the idea that's needed, and being willing to, I don't want to say cope with that, but being willing to kind of accept that as a challenge too,
Yeah.
as like a young entrepreneur, right? Yeah.
Yeah, holy crap, that's so true. There's this idea of heropreneurship, where
Mm,
a lot of entrepreneurs, it's not so much of the idea that they're interested in or
mhm,
helping or whatever the end idea is. It's more about them, that they accomplish something, that they're putting their work out there. Um,
mhm,
and this idea of heropreneurship, especially in social entrepreneurship, is such a challenge because they're completely opposite concepts, right? With community
yes.
members, you're supposed to be helping them. You're supposed to
Mhm,
be helping their needs. But when it becomes more about you and whether or not you will succeed or fail, you will, I mean, on more chances you will fail because you're not speaking to your end community member. But it becomes
mhm,
more of I don't know how to say it, but at the end of the day, there's this entrepreneur in our community called His name's Nabil, and he said that my job is to make sure that I go out of business because the challenge that I've solved is no longer needed. You know, it's
Mm.
ultimately, if I'm able to solve this challenge, then my business is no longer needed, and I'm happy to go out of business because of it. Um, so it's just about having that sense of humility and knowing that when your job is done, and being able to track when your job is done if the
Mhm.
challenge is over. And it's a very simple concept, but I think we grow further and further away from it, especially as entrepreneurs who are trying to solve a business or trying to create a business.
I agree. I agree. And what you mentioned that your network, like how you mentioned going out of business, I think that's like such a good way of saying it because at the end of the day, you want to solve the problem, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it may very well be the case that the problem is prolonged or maybe like it's never solved, but you're constantly working towards solving it. And it's, I guess, never about us, more so about what we're, yeah, who we're
Yeah.
helping, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I know we have a couple of minutes left, and I wanted to ask very quickly, how are you balancing school and starting your own nonprofit?
Honestly, initially it was super challenging. And I was overwhelmed and like, yeah, like Jeannie too, like my co-founder, she was very overwhelmed herself too. Um, Honestly, I mean, before starting this, I think I had a pretty good routine in general. Like starting off, I usually wake up pretty early in the morning. I start my day off pretty early. I think I'm very, even with this whole COVID situation that happened, of course, like there was a lot of changing dynamics with classes and like I'm like keeping in touch with people and like making sure people are okay and such. Yeah, it was a little overwhelming at first, but I think I got a handle of it now. I think just being very like I think it all ties down to time management, just being very particular about when am I going to spend time working on maybe COVID-19 and maybe other projects, and when am I going to focus on my schoolwork.
Mm,
Sometimes the two mix, sometimes they don't. But yeah, it's been it's been a ride. But I think like for me, I think the biggest thing is self-care, taking care of myself, making sure I'm doing well personally, because I can't attend to these things if I'm not doing well.
mm,
Um, and so self-care is like a huge, huge thing, I think, for myself, and I think it should be for other people too. Like, taking care of yourself is important. Like, yeah, like for instance, like for you, like if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't be doing this, right? You can't
yeah.
be doing impaction. You can't be helping others. I think, yeah, for us to be there for others, is to be there for ourselves first. But um, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
No,
I
it
think
does. It
it's
does.
been,
It
yeah,
does.
okay, okay.
What does self-care actually look like for you? What are some things that you do to help yourself?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I think exercise has been a big one.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I think that's a lot of times undermined, especially amongst college students.
mm-hmm.
Um, Diet too, but I've gone, it wasn't so good in the past, it's gone a lot better now. And making sure to actually eat. I think maybe before diet, make sure you eat as a college student, right? um, let's see. And then recently, I've been trying to be a little bit like more mindful, like because I think like yourself probably like other social entrepreneurs or students like very very busy and it's very easy to get caught up with what you're doing and not slow down. So mindfulness could be meditation or just taking a few moments just to really slow down and not do anything. um, I think that does help in the long run just to kind of slow down, reduce anxiety, reduce the stress. So like for me, I usually wake up, I do my exercise, I clean up, I shower, maybe eat, and then I do like my little mindfulness activity, whether it be meditation or just kind of sitting at peace. And then I start with my work. And I think normally, like
Mm,
my mind is at ease when I'm starting the work, regardless of how much I have to do.
mm,
And knowing at the end of the day, it's going to be okay. You know, you gave your best. Um, yeah,
mm.
that's kind of how it goes for me. And then make sure to sleep enough too, like
Yes.
sleeping on time. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I know that we're closing up, but do you have any asks for, well, actually, two more questions, sorry. So
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
if you had a piece of advice to share to our social entrepreneurs, what would your piece of advice be?
Good question. Um, let's see. I think being okay with change is
Mm,
a big one for me. Being okay with change. Um, and it kind of ties in with what we mentioned earlier about like you being like okay with accepting that maybe it's not your idea, that's not the way to go. Being okay with changing dynamics maybe in your life. Um, and just, yeah, it kind of ties into adaptability and like being willing to learn through those changes.
mm,
Um, yeah, that's kind of, yeah. Yeah, I think that applies to, I mean, personally, at least, I can't speak for everyone, but like that applies to life and also maybe entrepreneurship or business. Yeah,
Absolutely.
but yeah, thank you. And then did you ask another question after that, or was that your,
One more
uh,
question.
okay, okay, cool.
What are your asks from our community? What are things that we can do to help support you or this social impact challenge overall?
Thank you. Thank you for asking that. Yes, so I think I think exposure would probably do us best. I think that's many others like, yeah, I think, yeah, giving us a follow, giving us follow, sharing maybe Cook-19, or like if it's something that resonates with you, and if any community members are ever involved in, I mean, are ever interested in being involved, we're happy to possibly get your community members integrated as well. You could just send an email to that email on the bottom right. Yeah, again, we bring people on. We try to bring people on a semesterly basis, and so that'll be cool. But yeah, yeah, sharing as much as you like sharing. I think that's the best thing. Sharing, donating if you can. But we understand, things are a little bit different now than they were in the past, and so yeah, I think sharing and just sharing our mission, sharing it with other people. And that's the biggest thing for us. Sharing word of mouth. Yeah, and then we're trying to build our social profiles as well. Uh,
Mm.
just yeah, I think social profiles maybe sometimes add a little bit to the credibility, right, with corporations. But um, yeah, thank you so much for asking that. Yeah,
Of course. So thank you so much, Ramzi. This has been an amazing session, and I know that our community members are going to be really thrilled to hear about a lot of the concepts that you talked about today, how you got started, what impact you made, the role of customer validation, pitching, how it is to be a student and create a nonprofit, how to incorporate a nonprofit. There's so many little gems in this entire video session that we'll be sure to send to our community members. And we'll be sure to also make sure that if they have any questions to reach out to you at the info email address. So thank you so much for that. I want to stop. Hold on. So what I just want to share with our community is that hold on 1 second. Ask to
you're
stop.
good. Take your time.
Do you mind not stop sharing your screen? And we'll
Absolutely.
just open it up
Yeah.
to us too.
Yeah.
So thank you. So what I'm going to
Thanks.
ask our community is, we have a couple of events that are coming up. Check out our social innovation competition applications for that close on December 20th. So if you have a physical product, make sure to apply and you might receive mentorship, funding, and network opportunities for the next 3 months. If you apply and as you're welcomed into our community. The second thing is we have an international book drive that's also happening, so that's actually closing on Tuesday. So we've already reached 1,000 books that have been donated around the country. If you have any more books to donate in the next 2 days, please do so, and then um, share that number and where you donated to us, and we'll be sure to add you into our community of doers as well. And then the third thing is that if you're a job creator or a job seeker, use our social impact job portal. We'll connect you directly to each other in very transparent and efficient ways. So those are the 3 asks that we ask from all of you. And we're really excited for what's to come in this coming year, and we're also very thankful for video session presenters like Ramzi here, who are making an amazing social change around the world every single day. So thank you for being a part of our community of doers. Thank you, Ramzi, for this amazing session, and I can't wait for you guys to participate in more and see more of these coming forward. So thank you guys.